What does it mean to live a good life? For the longest while, I've been on a personal quest to discover what it means to live a good life for myself. Through a variety of new experiences in the past year, I've developed a better grasp of what I seek, what sort of life would be best for me. I've spent much time observing the lives of others, real and fictional, and how they might align with the aims of my own. And as I've embarked on this journey of self-discovery, I've also encountered the obstacles built into the very systems our world operates within that prevent me and many others from living our best lives. There's much to mourn in this miserable world, right? The traumas inflicted by a legacy of capitalism, colonialism, patriarchy, and more seem to cut so deep. I don't know about you, but I'm frequently confronted with the very clear consequences of these systems on the psyches and ideologies and trajectories of the individuals I meet on a day-to-day basis. In response to these calamitous conditions, it feels as though many of us are seeking a salve, a cure of some kind in the comfort of consumerism. We are surrounded, our senses utterly assaulted by advertising. Every nook and cranny of our existence is bombarded with advertisements that manipulate our desires, constantly reminding us of what we lack and what we should aspire to possess in order to live a good life. Online and offline, sponsors clutter our life experiences. Many of us have an easier time recognizing brand logos than we do the plants that grow around us. We're trapped in a cycle of materialistic pursuits, our identities becoming entangled with the brands we consume, constantly chasing life around the corner, and constantly feeling inadequate because we haven't yet reached our aspirations. But pause. Don't get tied up. What would it actually take for you to live a good life? Stability, comfortable shelter, fulfilling food, rich relationships, the freedom to pursue your interests and curiosities. I think what many of us truly seek, even those who have gotten caught up in the consumer's grind, is rather straightforward. Our basic needs met, genuine human connections, meaningful experiences, and the ability to live life at our own pace, enjoying its simple joys and key moments alike. And if you have any knowledge of climate change, you probably envision sustainability and ecological harmony on a societal scale in your good life too. If this sounds like you, then you'd probably be interested in the Indigenous philosophy of Buen Vivir. Buen Vivir might literally translate to good living, but as a philosophy, it's far more expansive than its name implies. For one, some leading scholars on the subject are hesitant to even embrace its English translation. According to Eduardo, Gudynas, such a translation still sits too closely to Western conceptions of well-being centering the individual, whereas Buen Vivir is about the broader social and environmental context as well. Personally, I've never cared for GDP growth or any of the other popular markers of development. All I've wanted is for myself and those around me to be able to live a good life. In one way, the philosophy of Buen Vivir is about inquiring what it means to live a good life. The answer is that I decide, you decide, we decide, collectively. There is no single Buen Vivir because there is no single good life. Nor is Buen Vivir a static concept. It's not like we come up with the good life we want for ourselves now and etch it onto stone tablets to be piously adhered to forever. And nor is Buen Vivir an invitation to return to some idyllic past or demand that everyone become a homesteader in order to live in balance with nature. Buen Vivir is about flexibly responding to our ever-changing conditions together. Buen Vivir is not about imposing a single, homogeneous, and unrealizable good life, unlike the single, homogeneous pursuit of profit that our entire system is built around now. Buen Vivir is pluralistic and continuously evolving. It's about finding a variety of ways for people to live well together in a community, for different communities to live well together, and for individuals and communities to live well with nature. Our well-being as individuals is only made possible within a community which includes flora and fauna. One key aspect of Buen Vivir is its biting criticism of classical Western capitalist notions of development, including more recent proposals for green growth. One article contrasts Buen Vivir with the Fairfax Lateral Economics Wellbeing Index, which puts a dollar figure on national well-being. However, in the spirit of oppose and propose, Buen Vivir also presents a notably decolonial alternative, as we let go of Western capitalist and colonial impositions on speech, dress, labor, lifestyle, knowledge, social norms, relationships, and more, in favor of ways of life that free us from those mental and material binds. Buen Vivir was born through the synthesis of several indigenous traditions across South America, and thus the contributions of indigenous knowledge to Buen Vivir continues to be a critical thread. The values, experiences, practices, and worldviews found in today's interpretations of Buen Vivir existed prior to the arrival of European conquistadors, but they were silenced and opposed by colonial governments, and then marginalized and ignored by neo-colonial governments. Through ongoing grassroots efforts by indigenous and other movements in the region, fueled by the failures of the Latin American oligarchy, Buen Vivir has been gaining greater traction in the region and beyond. If you've been on this channel or been involved in this space for long enough, a lot of the ideas found in Buen Vivir probably aren't that new to you. I mean, the philosophy of Buen Vivir may be distilled in Latin America, but its essence has existed in a variety of times and places across the earth, from the African Ubuntu, which proclaims that I am because you are, to the Indian Eco-Swaraj, an initiative for self-determination, collective decision-making, and ecological resilience. Some governments in Latin America have taken elements of Buen Vivir into their own projects. In November 2020, the Colombian government created a Buen Vivir fund to finance entrepreneurial projects in indigenous communities, and the documentary series El Buen Vivir launched on YouTube and Colombian television to showcase how various indigenous communities in Colombia embody the concept. Buen Vivir has even found itself in the constitutions of Bolivia and Ecuador. For those cautious of cooptation, that fact alone should give some pause, but let's look a little deeper. In Bolivia, the concept is presented as vivir bien or summa camana, and it's included in the section of the Constitution that describes the ethical and moral principles of the state. In the Constitution, these ideas are connected with a plurality of indigenous concepts like the land without evil, Ivimare, and the path to the noble life, Kapaj Nan, as well as other principles like unity, equality, and social justice. The Constitution aims to ensure vivir bien by introducing an economic model aimed at increasing the quality of life for all citizens. In contrast, the Ecuadorian Constitution describes Buen Vivir, also referred to as Summa Cauce, as a set of rights related to health, shelter, education, and the environment. These rights exist alongside other rights such as freedom, participation, and protection, including other rights of nature. While these are noble initiatives, I think it's important to remain skeptical of how states manipulate their public perception. Governments don't always follow through on their words with deeds, and noble ideas like Buen Vivir are not immune to being compromised in favor of higher political or economic priorities. Despite championing ecologically progressive constitutions, the leaders of these nations have made concessions on their environmental ideals in favor of short-term oriented economic initiatives that are ostensibly intended to alleviate poverty. Take for instance the failure on the state level of the Yasuni ITT initiative, which aimed to keep oil underground in the Ecuadorian Amazon. The region had long been negatively affected by oil extraction, leading to the displacement of indigenous communities and loss of biodiversity. The initiative had four main goals: protecting the lives of indigenous peoples in voluntary isolation, preserving the unique biodiversity of Yasuni National Park, mitigating climate change by avoiding CO2 emissions, and initiating a transition to a post-fossil fuel era in Ecuador. In exchange for these efforts, Ecuador expected financial contributions of $3.6 billion from the international community, with wealthier nations taking responsibility based on the environmental impact. This was meant to introduce a new paradigm, within capitalism of course, to address some of the global imbalances caused by extractivism and economic growth. After receiving pledges totaling $200 million by 2012, less than a quarter of the initial goal, the Ecuadorian government said it would still move forward with the initiative, but by 2013, they concluded that the economic results were insufficient. The plan was scrapped, and oil drilling began in the park in 2016, expanding even closer to Indigenous territory in 2019. Despite the failure of the initiative, it has left a legacy of a social movement of young people dedicated to advocating for a transformative shift in the way we organize our world. Governments and corporations will be more than happy to betray the philosophy of Buen Vivir in exchange for greater wealth and power, which is why I believe Buen Vivir has to stick to its grassroots in order to succeed. I think it necessary to center and stay true to its key principles: harmony with nature, community-based living, and the interconnectedness of all things. For those familiar with the basics of social ecology, a concept first proposed by political philosopher Mary Bookchin, Buen Vivir can be seen as akin to the idea of third nature. In social ecology, third nature refers to the reintegration of first nature, which is the natural world that evolved over millions of years, and second nature, which is the social world that is flexible and subject to a collective human consciousness. Third nature can be found when ethical, human-scaled, and self-managed communities establish a creative and sustainable interaction with their natural environment. The political projects of both Buen Vivir and social ecology aim for social reconstruction along ecological lines. Social ecology in particular emphasizes that humans must play a creative and supportive role in perpetuating the integrity of the biosphere, as we are potentially the most conscious actors within it. Additionally, Buen Vivir introduces and synthesizes a variety of indigenous ideals and practices to aid in transforming human society along communal and ecological lines. For instance, the Quechua practice of ranti-ranti, or reciprocity, is a system of endless giving and taking, without delimitations, bound to the ethnic, cultural, and historical values of the community. During the pandemic, this institution manifested in the exchange of plant varieties and aided in reducing malnutrition and promoting food security among the communities that practice it. Across several Latin American countries, you can find the mutual aid institution of Minca, a tradition of community labor lent for the common good, such as the construction and maintenance of an irrigation canal or a road. It reminds me of the Gayap tradition found in the Caribbean, which serves the same purpose, which itself borrows from the earlier indigenous Kalinago concept of Kayapa. Collective well-being is also promoted through Waki, which distributes a person's land in their absence so that other communities or families may benefit, and the practice of Makikuna, a form of moral support lent to a family by the whole community in times of emergencies or emotional needs. At the junction of Buen Vivir and social ecology, I think you can find a nigh spiritual component within their shared recognition of the interconnectedness of all things. Viewing it through this lens is optional in my opinion, but Bookchin does describe that in reaching third nature, in healing that split between the natural and the social, humans will realize their potential as nature rendered self-conscious. In first nature, we evolved as every other living thing does to become humans. In second nature, we emerge as a species able to think and act in and for itself. In third nature, we can emerge as a species that thinks and acts in and for the world at large. As we're on this topic, I have an opportunity to make this distinction, so to be clear, what I'm describing is natural, not supernatural. I'm not discarding methodological naturalism because it's our best tool for distinguishing between facts and non-facts with respect to the physical world. However, there is benefit in incorporating the lenses of art, poetry, philosophy, and spirituality when it comes to understanding our social world. The logos, or logical and literal understanding of reality, leaves some space for the mythos, a poetic and non-literal understanding of reality, as long as the two aren't conflated. A purely scientific approach lacks a certain je ne sais quoi for our story-oriented brains, which is why I believe poetic liberties should be accommodated in our revolutionary political projects. At the same time, we have to be cautious. As we've seen with these top-down projects that adopt the title of Buen Vivir, it's easy for governments, NGOs, and corporations to adopt the poetic and fluffy-feeling language of Buen Vivir without being rooted in its substance, thereby watering it down into something merely reformist. I think that as with other aspects of prefigurative politics, Buen Vivir is best understood when it is lived. Prefigurative politics, by the way, is about the deliberate, experimental implementation of desired future social relations, institutions, infrastructure, and practices in the here and now. Practically, Buen Vivir encompasses the development of food sovereignty within communities, common land rights, the expansion and protection of local biodiversity, and economic solidarity through mutual aid and cooperative societies. As an alternative to Western models of development, Buen Vivir is compatible with the radically transformative aims of degrowth, which I have a whole video about already. I could even see Buen Vivir manifesting through the creation of library economies, which I also have a video on if you're curious. As a philosophy, Buen Vivir is still unfolding. It is not a template or a blueprint, but it's a way of conceiving solutions to our social, cultural, environmental, and economic issues by working together and in balance. It empowers us to embrace new perspectives beyond the limits of current models. It allows us to dream. Across Latin America and beyond, wherever there are transition towns, eco-villages, or other grassroots projects for change, more and more people can begin to take steps toward a better life rooted in community. Toward Buen Vivir. All power to all the people. Peace. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your fellow peoples. Thanks again, of course, to the family, including our newest members, Headphone Freak, Cleo, Dakota Jones, Evie, Johnny Moxley, and Archie. You can join these beautiful humans and support me too on patreon.com/SaintTrue. Check out my other videos for a range of radical topics. Thanks again. Peace.